My Lenovo X230, a sleek little laptop that I bought to take with me on the road. But due to certain circumstances, it has not been used on the road a whole lot. I have, however, played a lot of games on it, and out of my 3 main PCs, it's probably the one I play games on the most. And as I've been doing that, I found out that it isn't completely bad spec-wise. It can play anything older than a 10-year-old AAA game without any issues, which is about as high spec as Randolph games go, so it more than meets my demands. But low spec gaming can be a bit of a jungle, there are a lot of surprises to it. Games you thought would be low spec aren't, and games you thought would definitely be high spec are surprisingly not. But I've done the legwork, I've done the research, I've compiled a list. A list of low spec games for low spec computers. Let's get into it. Despite being released as a launch title for the PS2 in several territories, Red Faction is an absolute knockout of a game. Even today, sure, the texture resolution and the polygon count cannot keep up with today's standard, but 20 Earth years have passed since the game's release after all, so it is quite understandable. But in a lot of ways, it is disturbingly modern. There is a certain attention to detail that has been kind of lost in games as of late. There is a nuance to the NPC's reactions. They don't respond to the same way to every situation every time. Sometimes when you start firing at them, they run away, but most times they don't and act like normal video game enemies. But it's that thing where they sometimes flee or sometimes shout a rap voice line that makes them seem real. And then there are the animations. Everything in the game is animated. Every different button has a unique sound and animation. All the NPCs have several animations that aren't normal video game animations. And all the guns have a series of unique animations or react a certain way to certain input. Like the gun build of the machine gun jiggling when the machine gun is fired. And I don't know, there's something about this game that just makes it seem more modern. Like, stealth is an option, you can do it even though it's a normal shooter. And you can holster your gun and use social stealth even though it's a normal shooter. And there's a stealth section thrown in there, but it's optional and you can just whip out your gun and murder everyone there. And there is location-based damage, meaning that the handgun can be the best weapon in the game if you're good at headshots. And there are vehicles that are really well made, even though you only spend about 30 seconds in some of them. It's a very ambitious game, especially for something that was a launch title and that only had to deliver an okay experience to make bank. And it runs fantastic on the system, a little too fantastic in fact. My tiny trucker here pushed the frame rate well above 120, at which point it triggered a glitch that made a plot-critical submarine explode when dumped into water. So I had to install a fan patch that down-throttled the FPS to 60, which allowed the submarine to exist within the game's space-time continuum. So yeah, this game will run on basically any PC released within the last 20 years. Successfully kickstarted and released in 2013, Shadowrun Returns is what it says right there on the title. The return of the Shadowrun franchise to the realm of video games. My entry into the series was the SNES game when I was in my teens and early 20s, on a journey through the NES and SNES library to relive a period of gaming that I was barely alive for. And since my entire experience up until my journey had been Mario and Zelda, I was quite shook to find that old 8-bit and 16-bit games offered complexity on par with modern releases. And one of them was Shadowrun, the non-return version of Shadowrun. The non-return version of Shadowrun is part adventure game where you investigate your own attempted murder, and part action game where you shoot the people that attempt to re-murder you. And there are just something mind-blowing about playing a game with this amount of depth, with a controller that is shaped like a dog bone and has less buttons than I have fingers. So when the franchise was coming back to gaming in the early 10s, I was on that shit like a fly that is on shit. And while Returns isn't quite like the old SNES game, it's still amazing. It's actually closer to the tabletop system than the SNES game. Skills, classes and damage rolls are here, and it's presented in an isometric package and plays a bit like an XCOM game. Tactical turn-based cover and all that jazz. Compared to later releases in the series, it's a bit simplistic in the gameplay department and in the world exploration department, being a mostly straightforward linear affair. So it's the story that carries the game on its shoulder, and boy does it. Starring a character of the player's design, the game opens up as the protagonist received a digital will from a former friend of theirs. The will is what is called a dead man's switch, a contract to solve that person's murder that goes live when that person dies. And that is what the game is about. Finding out who killed your old friend and also stopping some magical extra-dimensional aliens because it's Shadowrun. And Shadowrun Returns is, in my opinion, the best Shadowrun games when it comes to actually blending cyberpunk and fantasy, which you know is the selling point of the franchise. And normally it never really does anything with it. Shadowrun isn't a game where technology and magic are at odds and clash. It's a world where those two constructs exist, and they are very cleanly separated, so when the setting actually does something with it, like in Dead Man's Switch, it's exciting and I like it a lot. And it's a game that largely consists of 2D background assets, and it's turn-based, so it will run on pretty much any PC made within the last 10 years. And now for some fun games to play with friends, because this is a laptop and it's easily movable to another location where other human beings are also located with their own low-spec computers. One of my all-time favorite classic go-to co-op games, and a game that I have been playing for the better part of 2 decades now, is SWAT 4. It's unfortunately just a bit of a hidden gem, as I've introduced it to at least 10 to 20 different people that had either never heard of it or never played it. But the sort of fun thing about it is that I have never introduced anyone to it that didn't like it. It's just that good. If you are like those people that have never heard about it, let me introduce you. In SWAT 4 you play as a SWAT commander, and you and your team, which is either comprised of AIs or human players. And you and that team of either AI or human players then get dumped into a level where there are hostiles and hostages. You must then bring order to chaos by neutralizing and or arresting the hostiles and avoid harming the hostages. You are then at the end of the level judged on how well you did. Securing evidence and taking down hostiles with non-lethal means gives you more points than going in guns blazing. Yes, in stark contrast to real life America, this game actually punishes you for murdering unarmed civilians, and it expects you to act like a professional and de-escalate situations by using appropriate force to match the situation. How things have changed in the last 15 years. Graphically it looks like a Source game, so if your computer can run Half-Life 2, it can definitely run this. Heroes 3 is a game that everyone can play, and a lot of people already have. At least if you're from Eastern Europe or the Nordics, then you definitely know what this is, or is at least familiar with it through cultural osmosis. Each player takes control of one of 9 factions in a turn-based strategy game. Each player gets a turn, and during that turn they can upgrade or buy one building, purchase the units that are available from the garrison, move their heroes around the overworld a certain amount of steps to secure resources, explore, fight monsters or fight other players, or take their castles. Unlike SWAT 4, it's an insanely long-winded game, and each match can take days, so it's not the kind of game I physically play with my friends. It's one that I play online with them when I have a week of free time to kill. and thanks to the game being released in 1998 and relying completely on 2D sprites, I can play it on pretty much any Windows machine ever made. A slightly shorter alternative to Heroes, but a game in the same kind of vein, is Age of Empires 2. It's the kind of game that you get together for and play one round of, and then at 1:30 at night you attempt a second game, and someone falls asleep halfway through the feudal age, and whoever wins doesn't win because of skill, but because they got the most sleep the night before. And the victory is therefore very hollow. The game itself is simple to learn the basics of and hard to master the specifics of. You pick a starting faction and then you and all the other players are dumped into a map. On the map you will gather resources, build buildings, advance your civilizations through 4 distinct eras and a 5th if the game goes really long. You can buy different units and each unit has different strengths and weaknesses, and you can use those weaknesses against other players' factions units and engage in a very elaborate session of rock, paper, scissors. Graphically, let me tell you a story. When I was 16 years old and living at boarding school, laptops were only just starting to become a thing, and my wealthy parents thought that I should buy my own laptop. And since I have no way of having a job while at boarding school because it was out in the middle of fucking nowhere, I was stuck using my father's old hand-me-down laptop that he handed down to my brother, which I then had to bargain for to use. That laptop ran Windows 1998 and didn't have a graphics card or even a graphics chip. And it still ran Age of Empires 2. In fact, that was the only game it ran. And I played it a lot to get me through boarding school, because we had a curfew and only internet access in the school part of the school and not in a dormitory housing. Not too long ago, Wi-Fi was this weird sort of luxury that was coveted and you weren't supposed to use it all the time, which is wild as fuck to think about right now in the year 2020. To return to simpler times and shorter play sessions, let's round up our co-op talk with Left 4 Dead. You and 3 friends play as the 4 characters, and you must then make your way through various landscapes on the continent assaulted by zombies. The game is nicely divided into campaigns, and each campaign divided into 4 levels. There is an order to go through them in, but it's not set in stone, and you have to be kind of a die-hard fan to make sense of how the campaigns tie into each other. But it's purposefully done that way, so that you can tackle any campaign in any order and have a great time with your friends. And speaking of friends, I got Mr. Wild Potato Industries to tell you about some of his favorite low spec games. So, take it away, Devin. I'm going surfing.
Howdy, it's me, Devin, and I'm hacking into the stream waves. Yeah, I'll go with that. To tell you that a good portion of Looking Glass's games are well worth playing, and because they're old as dirt, they'll run on just about anything. There are 4 games I really recommend from Looking Glass, them being System Shock 1 and 2 and Thief the Dark Project and Thief 2 The Metal Age. I've talked about the former 2 in length before, but if you don't know, they're basically some of the earliest pioneers of the immersive sim genre that Looking Glass helped to create. They're like a fusion of RPG, FPS, and horror games that still feel modern in their approach, even if their graphics and control layouts don't. System Shock 2 still has some especially strong atmosphere 21 years on, and the sound work and writing is just phenomenal. Night Dive also did a great job in making these two playable on modern operating systems, with System Shock 1 getting a whole source port makeover. Unfortunately, the OG Thief games never got the same treatment officially, but fans have made a patch called TF Fix, which makes the games run smoothly. It's a pretty easy install, and once you got it set up, it actually plays all the cool animated cutscenes and supports higher resolutions, so you can see them low poly characters in HD. If you haven't played the Thief games before, they're kind of like the pinnacle of stealth games. They're simple on paper. Basically, you stick to the shadows and try not to make a lot of noise, but what they managed to pull off with this simple gameplay loop is amazing, and these environments are especially gorgeous. Really blows Metal Gear Solid out of the water in terms of stealth and world building, and that game came out the same year, admittedly on weaker hardware. Anyways, I'll quit rigging the mainframe and let our host Randolph take it from here. See y'all!
Well, thank you for that, Devin. Let's round out the video by talking about 3 of my favorite deep dive RPGs. You know, the kind of game that you start at the beginning of a holiday and then slowly become more and more consumed with, and stop performing basic functions like answering your family's texts, showering, going to the bathroom until after the turd has crowned. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah. Those kinds of games. Those kinds of games that you play for 18 hours straight and end up spending hundreds of hours in, but never fucking get anywhere or complete them, and that's fine. You deserve that mental timeout, my dude. You work hard, you deserve to play hard. So here are 3 of those kinds of games that you can load up on a tiny laptop and bring with you on vacation. The first deep dive RPG we're gonna talk about is of course the deepest of them all, New Vegas. We've talked a lot about New Vegas, but there's also a lot of game here. To fully complete the game takes about 150 hours, so it will outlast even the longest of vacations. And even if you've already played it a lot before, there's always a side quest that you heard about on Twitter to immerse yourself in, or a shiny expansion sized mod to start, or hell, one of the already 4 great expansions that you probably haven't done on the booby character you made after you became a disgusting pervert and a disappointment to your loved ones.
Yeah, they know about the fucking hentai, Jeremy.
On the tiny laptop, I play this a lot. It's so easy to boot up, and I can do a side quest and then turn it off and then realize that I've killed about 4 hours. It's so easy to play it on this laptop that gameplay from several of my second run videos have actually been captured on this thing. And it's powerful enough that I can even run OBS and capture it at a decent 720p resolution.
I just love to give you funny feelings all night, sweetheart, but I really must trouble with some business. We'll reunite sweet and soon, I promise.
Another game that I love equally, but a very different game, is the ill-fated third child of the ill-fated Troika games. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, a legendary game from a legendary time. If New Vegas is pretty easy to run, then Bloodlines is piss easy to run. It's a source game for one, and those have always catered to low-spec PCs. And it's a handful of years younger than New Vegas and takes place in a much smaller world. I don't even think you could call Bloodlines an open world. It's more like half a dozen hubs connected by fast travel, and each hub only offers a handful of locations and maybe a dozen quests. But what it lacks in quantity, it more than makes up in quality. Every quest has a lot of variables, like so many. And making just the slightest change to your character at any point opens up a dozen new ways to approach quests that you didn't know about before. It's really good, and it takes place in a sexy modern day vampire world and deals with juicy vampire politics, and there are juicy vampire ladies with big titties. And I don't mind that. Especially not when it's trapped within such an excellent package of a game. And oh yeah, there's a porn store in the game as well, and the guy who owns it, he's a hoot.
And we got everything you'll ever need. Softcore, hardcore, gay, straight, farm, or furry. We got shockers, shivers, self-lubricators, and strap-ons. Chains, crops, and canes are in the back next to the triple ripples. Like I said, we got it all.
Reminds me of how porn stores used to be in the good old days. And our last and the most surprising pick on our list is Deus Human Revolution Director's Cut. Not surprising because of the nature of the game, it's a deep dive RPG. It has a Bloodlines-esque structure and I'm into it. But a surprising final entry because I'm surprised that it actually runs on my system. Yeah, sure, HR proper is a 9-year-old game, but the director's cut is the spruced up 2013 port. And while that was 7 years ago, it was kind of a beast graphically when it came out, and I think my X230 might be of a similar age. So when I booted it up and it ran at a steady 30-ish FPS, I was surprised. Like, look how itty bitty this little thing is. I've already mentioned New Vegas and its post-apocalyptic setting, Bloodlines and its modern fantasy setting, and Deus Ex with its cyberpunk setting rounds out the holy trinity of my favorite anime fetish RPG settings. The game opens up as Adam Jensen, security chief of Seraph Industries, and our protag man is going over a presentation with his ex-girlfriend Megan, who is the chief science officer at Seraph Industries. As the discussion concludes, Megan heads off to the lab and Adam heads up to talk to the big boss man himself, Seraph's son. But while talking to Seraph, the building is then attacked by mercenaries and Adam springs into action and shoots the bad guys and attempts to rescue Megan, only to be thrown through a wall by a cybernetically enhanced mercenaries, and watched helplessly as Megan is then murdered by that merc. 6 months later, and an assload of reconstructive surgeries, a now cybernetically enhanced Adam is called into work because Seraph Industries is once again under attack. However, this time it's just some anti-augmentation terrorists who have broken into a Seraph experimentation lab. Adam is then airdropped into the facility, and here the game begins proper. Like every other deep dive RPG, you can choose how Adam goes about completing his mission. The objectives of the game are usually pretty simple, like make your way through a facility and also pick up a sample of new tech like in this one. It's up to you to pick the skills you want Adam to have and the weapons that he should use, and then use those weapons to make it through the level. I'm on the game's highest difficulty, aka give me Deus Ex, so I'm gonna go with a less than lethal approach for this run. And use this tranq gun here to take down the thug and then make it past this section completely undetected and without setting off any alarms. The really cool thing? You can work your way through the entire game without ever setting off an alarm and getting spotted. And there is an achievement for that. That's crazy, man. The game isn't all levels either. About 2/5 of the game are spent in one of two hub zones that the game has to offer: Detroit, USA, and the man-made city of Hangzhou, China. Here, things become a lot more traditionally RPG-like. There are shops, quests and collectibles, and I love these bits of the game on the harder difficulty because you get to experiment a little with the game's mechanics without it having to be a fail scenario that attracts 20 armed guards that turn you into salami with their big bad guy guns. So yeah, this has been a video about my X230 and some of the low spec games that I like to play on it. I really enjoy playing games on things that don't look like they should be able to play games. And even though this is a laptop, a thing that plays games, and it's playing old games which it should realistically be able to run, it's still neat because it's still so tiny. I'm from a time where computers were still fairly big, and if they were small, then they couldn't perform as well as a big computer. Like now, sure, a small computer will have a tough time doing as good as a big computer, but you can make a small computer that does as well as a big computer. It's just that more expensive. But back when I was a kid, you couldn't. You couldn't make the components that powerful, that small. So I still have this childlike wonder when it comes to technology that's smaller than it should be. How normal people look at puppies, I look at computers. But I'm curious, do you have any low spec gaming rig of your own or any low spec gaming recommendations? Please tell me down below in the comments or join the Discord and tell me there. Until next time, bye bye.